Planet Zoo! Oh my god, I can not even begin to tell you how long I've been waiting to play this game. And honestly, I'm not entirely disappointed. Well, mainly because it does a lot of things really, really right. And it has a couple of issues. Some things that I definitely believe it's doing wrong, but they're tolerable for the time being, but they are going to get very frustrating the longer you play. That being said, this is definitely a very, very good Zoo Tycoon successor. And as far as zoo simulations go, the management aspect of it is really good. It's just, it does suffer from some issues. So, let's get into it. So, I've got a franchise running, and that is what I would honestly say is the main mode of the game. The career mode is where you kind of learn how to play the game. It goes through each individual step. It's a little bit glacially paced. Like, I will say, it does handhold you quite closely. So it does seem to be a little bit slow at teaching you things, but that said, you kind of need to know those things. The challenge mode I haven't really delved into yet, and of course there's the sandbox mode, as you would expect, where you can just build with no real restrictions whatsoever, but even that has some issues. So we're just going to jump back into the franchise mode, and I'm going to explain to you what it kind of is like when you're building a zoo. Okay, and here we are, and it's nighttime, which means you're probably not going to see very much. Honestly, lighting in this game compared to Planet Coaster, and it is running on the same engine as Planet Coaster, there's a lot of similarities between that, and of course Frontier's other game, Jurassic World Evolution. There is quite a lot there. That is very, very similar. But it is limited on the lighting. There isn't actually that much there, but again, it could be hidden behind research. I'm not really too sure. I haven't seen like the full tech tree, so I'm not entirely sure about that. Well, we have a facility broken down. Mechanics requested. Alright, that's fine. Okay, so what are we going to do here? So this is the zoo thus far. I'm just going to zoom out so you can kind of see. This is the entire area that we've got to build in. For this franchise, there's quite a lot. But you're never really going to get to that point until you've played maybe 20 or 30 hours into it, I would say. Because getting these habitats going and actually turning a profit is not easy. And the reason is the management aspect of this game is very, very in-depth. So all the animals take a lot of care to really get through. So let's just run through a couple of things here. So you got all our basic facilities. Over here is where all the staff facilities are. So our vet, mechanic, and that sort of stuff is. Now, I'm going to just fast forward it so that it's not nighttime anymore. And then you can actually see what the game will look like at its normal lighting. Right, okay, so now it's kind of morning. It's 8:22 in the daytime, and it's also December now. So if you're paying attention to the date that it was, when we started speeding things up, you'll realize that the timescale seems a bit off, and that is the key point of all of the problems I have with this game. So, first, these are our sable antelopes, and you can get really up close to them. You can see just how realistic those animations are and how real these animals look. Like the amount of fur detail and that sort of thing, it's really nice. Even when they go into the water, for example, if they swim, they get realistically wet, they dry themselves off. It's very nicely detailed. This is probably not the best example considering the antelope is black in color, so you can't really see all of that detail. But I can just jump over to another animal, and you'll see just the scale of it, even when something is very, very small. So we've got our pangolin enclosure here, and I'm just trying to find one. There's one. I see you. I see you. They're very, very small. But even on something this small, the amount of detail, like I thought that was textured on at first, I'll be honest. I thought those scales were textured on, but actually, I mean they are, but each individual scale has a nice little bit of reflection and stuff going on. You can see the animals blink, there's a little bit of fur, and this is for something that's very, very small. This is one of the smallest animals that you can have in a habitat. So, camera doesn't really like being rotated when it's that close. But you can just see just how much detail there are on these little animals here. The people look quite cartoony, which is, I guess, to be expected. They're Planet Coaster humans. So not real humans. If we have a look at the wild dogs as well, you can actually see. They're very... Okay, that one had a little bit of a glitch with its tongue there, but they are very, very nicely rendered. And this is one of the things that I love about this game, the attention to detail. You don't see animations being reused between animals, even if they seem very similar. For example, the wild dogs, the hyenas, and the wolves don't have... Oh, there we go. There's a nice show of the wet fur there. They don't have like the same animation set. They all have unique animations that are all very nicely detailed. They do have a little bit of like, you know, game hiccups every now and then, like that where the jump, it just seems a little bit off. But they interact with their environment really, really well. So if you put these rocks around, instead of being obstacles, they can actually climb up these things. So there's just change in elevation there is really, really, really nice. So I love the amount of detail they've got in this. And just each individual animal having such a huge amount of care required is actually something that's really nice. For example, our little green iguana here doesn't like being too warm or too cold. Where is it? It's in here somewhere. Also, I love the effect. You can hear how like muffled everything is when you're inside this enclosure. It's actually really nice. I don't actually see the iguana, which is a little bit worrying because this iguana is actually kind of dying right now. Where's the keeper? Keeper, can you go and deal with that, please? Because, yeah, this is an issue, which I'll get to. I'll get to the issues in a sec. It's just, we do need to talk about some of the stuff I actually love about the game before I start talking about the things I don't like. So, yeah, a really, really nice amount of detail in the game. Even for things that are very small, you have just such a huge amount of things here. It's just cleaning up the exhibit and feeding the animal and so on. It's actually really very nice. We've got protesters, which I absolutely hate. It's protesting the iguana being in such bad condition, which again I will get to in a moment. You do have a lot of these conservation things as well. Like, for example, we've got these boards which can educate people on conservation and certain issues. You've got loads of things to choose from, and these are very, very nicely researched articles that they've got here. And these contribute to the education level of your park while people gormlessly stare at them. Yeah. But yeah, when looking at the sort of management of the overall park itself, there's a lot that goes to it. Making money is not too difficult if you remember to put the donation bins out, which are these little things here. You do get your money in so long as people have access to them and they are close enough to where people congregate to look at the animals. So, yeah, like these areas here near the parks, this is where people kind of look at the wild dogs. So, if you have feeders and things near to these fences, people tend to like build up around them to look at the animals, which is normal for a zoo. It's fairly realistic, and then people throw money into the bins if they're close enough. So that's kind of how all of that works. You do also need to research things. This is something I have to deal with. We've got two antelopes fighting because there can only be one alpha male, and they're going to constantly fight over who's the alpha. I don't know if there's, you know, an effect from this, or whether they just keep fighting until you actually sort that out. But this actually happened because one of these males was born in this enclosure. I believe it's this one is the younger one. Yeah, this one is the older one. Yes, this is the current alpha. So there can only be one male, and this male has unfortunately been born here and then matured, so now it's fighting for dominance over the alpha, which I believe is actually his own father, which is kind of interesting. You do have to pay attention to genetics, though. This one has much better genes than this one, I think. So I probably want to keep the younger one around. But again, these are the dynamics of like the actual animals and their social behavior that you do have to pay attention to. Some animals prefer to be alone, some prefer to be in groups, and you kind of have to keep that in mind. And you also have to research it so you get more animal-specific things, like these wild dogs, like these dog balls to play around with. I mean, after all, they are dogs. They do play with dog balls and chew toys. There's some chew toys around here somewhere. There we go, there's one. So they do play with these massive chew toys. So of course, yeah, whenever you research that, they do get something to play around with. I believe that is a feeder as well. So these dog balls, that they actually have food and stuff in them, very much like what your own dog or cat would have. So lots of very happy people coming in here. And of course, one of our dogs is pregnant, I believe. Let's have a look. Oh yeah, you can actually see she does visibly kind of look pregnant, actually. So she's going to have puppies. There we go, there's the puppy. Her puppy has been born. And they are adorable. They are absolutely adorable. This is really, really, really sweet. And all of this contributes to things. So the franchise mode has something that is different to all the other modes, which is these conservation credits. And you actually get this for participating in conservation efforts. So if you release animals into the wild, if you trade animals with other zoos, you get conservation credits. And if you meet community challenges, you also get conservation credits. And these are used to actually purchase animals. Now, when you purchase animals, I believe, yeah, these are pangolins that we were looking at before, but there's a load of animals in this game. Like, so many. So you've got aardvarks, buffaloes, wild dogs. I'm not going to go through all of them, but there's just so many. Cheetahs. And the more endangered something is, and of course the more appealing an animal is, so it's just, for example, we'll look at the Siberian tigers. You can actually see the price of these. They're pretty significant. So if I wanted a male and female to potentially breed them, their actual genetics for breeding potential affects how much they will end up costing. So if I have a look at the most expensive one, yeah, these up here, they're not only young, but they have very, very good genes. This one is very fertile, so if you want to breed them, these are the ones you're looking for. And by breeding them, you can even see some of the effects. So if I just pick our antelopes again, we can actually go here and compare mates. And we can choose one of the females. Both of these are actually pregnant already, so yeah, we're not going to go there. But you can actually see these are the actual potential genes that you will end up with. So they'll have very good immunity up here. Or rather, this red area is, I believe, what they will end up with. So you'll have something up here. So decent immunity, decent fertility. Not so much on the longevity. It could be either reasonably high or kind of low, and then size. This is just the overall size of the animal. So that's what they'll get. So you can actually kind of predict what would happen if you were to breed specific ones. And there are ways of doing that. You can actually put them in separate habitats to ensure that happens, versus just keeping them in the same habitat. So I could even split these up. Could take one of the males out and one of the females out and put them into another habitat by themselves. So that's something you can do. There's a lot of control you have over this, and how you participate in these conservation efforts. Now that I've talked about all of that, let's get into the issues that this game has. And there are a number of them that will get very frustrating, depending on how patient you are as a player. Now, this uses Planet Coaster's building system, so you have a means of gluing just about anything together. For example, these shops, that's a prefab of 2 buildings, and you can place the actual vendor shops in them, which are all, those are closed right now, and that's another issue I'll get onto. But you can place those in there, and that becomes one building on its own, becomes a group. You can absolutely do that with anything in the game. Absolutely anything. This entire shelter here for our antelopes, which is actually required. This is a required shelter for this particular animal. This is an entirely custom building as well, and you can take any of these and save them as blueprints. Something you can do in Planet Coaster as well. The thing is, where it breaks down is in the AI and the time scale. You can see it's already getting nighttime, and this has been on normal speed the entire time. Now, the AI and the path building don't really like each other very much. Now, you might notice, okay, these exhibits right here, we've got for small animals like iguanas and snakes. You can get a whole bunch of these, and you can stick them all together. I'm actually going to pause the game to kind of demonstrate this. You can kind of stick them all together. So if I put one here, I can then do this and this and this. So we've got a row of 4. Now, that looks cool, sure. But watch what happens when I put paths down. Now, the paths don't connect to any of the others unless I specify them to do so, and they really don't like being that close together, so that doesn't work. Now, when you do two separate rows of this, they try to connect on every single side, including the side that's not accessible sometimes, which means you end up with bugged paths. And one thing I experienced with this, let's just get rid of this entire group, is that when you do that, the AI, and I do mean the staff in this case, do not know how to get to that building. So whatever animals you put in there end up dying because they don't get fed. Problem number one. So assuming you don't do any fancy path work to make it look pretty, it still works. That does solve the problem with the AI. But then you end up with another problem, which is to do entirely with the timescale. So you might notice, okay, the keepers, they look after the animals. They do the feeding, the cleaning, and all of that. And if you have enough keepers, rightfully, there should be no problems. And this is something that you do in Jurassic World Evolution as well. You have your rangers go and do the same thing. But in this, you have to actually go to your zoo here and go to staff. And you have to designate work zones. So with work zones, let's just open this up so you can kind of see it. Green is what's in this work zone. And orange is another work zone. And red is not in a work zone at all. Now, what happens with this is, if you designate this area and assign a staff member to it, they will work on those areas, and that applies to every single type of staff. So our keepers assigned to these, they will look after the animals in this. The mechanic will go to these and repair them as necessary, and the vet will go to them and check on any animals that are sick or anything like that if needed. So they will patrol these areas. You do have to set this up because they do not seem to automatically do it. And I don't really know why. And so that becomes part of the problem that we face. Now, it is nighttime, so it's going to be a little bit harder to see here, but bear with me, because it does get worse. So let's open this barrier, this habitat here. This barrier is very damaged, and if it breaks, the walls come down, the animals escape. So I need to call a mechanic to go and repair that. Now, I do have a mechanic assigned to this place. The problem is, because time progresses very fast, this barrier status goes down very quickly. As does the food in their enclosure. Like, this is completely empty now. And if you have a look at the animals, every so often you end up with animals complaining that they're starving or hungry, and this happens with this enclosure a lot. That the animals are actually starving, even though there's enough feeders for them, because the keepers just don't get to it in time. I've assigned more keepers to it, and it still doesn't work. I've assigned more keepers' huts to it, which is where they actually prepare the actual food. And this is apparently very inefficient, so I probably need another one there. But this is where they prepare the food for the animals, and they can only serve one keeper at a time. Even with more of these, it doesn't work. This water treatment is getting damaged as well. I'm going to have to call a mechanic on that. So it gets very difficult. Even if you assign everything to a work zone and plan it out that way, you're still going to find that animals get hungry, or cages or habitats get dirty way too quickly. And that is all down to just how quickly time passes in this game. And although the developers have put up a message about addressing the issue, and they have apparently made some changes to the timescale, it still doesn't seem to be enough because it's going way too quickly. So, yeah, barriers get damaged, animals escape, and this can all happen in the space of about 2 hours. And that's even with, like this one I showed you, this habitat is in a work zone, and there is a mechanic assigned to this. Still not enough. They still don't come often enough, even if you put the maintenance up. And the normal maintenance for mechanics is actually every year. I've set it to every 9 months. Not good enough. I'm going to have to reduce that down to 6 months just to make it effective. So there's a lot of issues here that just don't seem to... Oh, like here. We have a pangolin that's hungry because they're not being fed in time, and there are 2 keepers associated with this habitat, and they still don't get fed often enough. Because, yeah, the most I can assign this to is they get fed every month. Which, if you look at the time ticking over, that's every 30 seconds. And the animals just get hungrier before the keeper can get to them. So I end up having to call the keeper, even though they're assigned to this and are supposed to feed them every now and then. They just don't get to them often enough. So it is a very, very big problem. So even in a situation where the AI doesn't have any bugs, doesn't have issues getting to the habitats or exhibits, you still have the problem of animals just not being taken care of often enough. And now we have a broken barrier. Which happens because this drops way too quickly and they just don't get to it in time. So now we have an antelope on the loose and they're going to need to be recovered. So this is a very big problem. Everything gets damaged way too quickly. Everything wears out way too quickly, and even with enough staff, because right now there are 5 keepers, 4 mechanics, and 2 vets. There is still not enough staff to maintain a park that only has 3 habitats in it, which I find just absolutely ludicrous. So this is where the issues with the game just ultimately lie. It's just the timescale seems way off. It seems a lot faster than it ultimately should be. And that's not even addressing the saddest issue of all, is that animals get born in your park, and assuming you get attached to them, which you probably will, considering they're really adorable. I'm describing all of this while there's escaped animals on the loose. But if you do get attached to them, they are going to die. And they're going to die very quickly. In the space of a 6-hour playthrough on this one farm, I had a pangolin, Chinese pangolin, which are absolutely adorable, get born in this habitat and die in the space of 6 hours. Which just seems really way too fast. And I only have 3 enclosures here. Only 3. So now extrapolate that problem out to having 20 habitats of different animals to look after with all sorts of different needs. When you're running around doing all of this management, the first habitat that you die, by the time you get the 20th habitat set up, the animals in the first habitat are going to start dying. And that's before you've even had a chance to do anything with them. So this is where, like, I just feel like the game is rushing. I don't entirely know why they've done this, but it just seems like it's rushing along, and it really shouldn't be the way. This is, by the way, the 3rd escape I've had with this enclosure. Now, I could give them better walls, which will last longer. But even so, I don't feel like that should be necessary. It shouldn't be the way where we just have these things needing repairs that often. And now, of course, if you compare this to a realistic timescale, enclosures and such at zoos probably need maintenance every 2 to 3 months. Probably. But then when you have that that issue of 2 to 3 months becoming effectively an hour or 2, or in fact way less than that, so like a few minutes it could pass by, and it's just like, that's going to need repairing again. And now I've got a warning that, yeah, we've got an animal that's starving because they're just not being fed often enough. And it's just, it's absolutely incredulous to think that one of the reasons you need so much management on any of these habitats is just because they're speeding things along way too quickly. And so, yes, even if they have addressed the issues with the timescale and said, hey, you know, we're gonna fix these things, it's just not enough. Maybe that's the way the game was meant to be played. Maybe this is the way it's intended by Frontier, but the way I see it, this should be something that's optional to us. Even with the sandbox mode, you're still going to have animals dying, you're still going to have animals aging up very quickly, you're still going to have barriers getting damaged. And I feel like even in the sandbox mode, that should be something you can straight up either just turn off, or slow down, or just have better control over. If I want to have a sandbox where no animals die, or no animals get born even, or I want a place where there's no maintenance, and I just want to build enclosures and design a park, I should be able to do that, and I just can't. So, yeah, as far as this being in main mode, I still enjoy the core concept of it, and I love the way it's been implemented. Everything about it, from promoting proper ecotourism, for example, to promoting conservation culture. I love every part of that. But I think this is a game that just needs to kind of slow down and just, you know, have some time to smell the roses, as it were, because this is just speeding along way, way, way too quickly. And that is Planet Zoo. And yeah, before I end, of course, one last thing that I do have just a minor issue with. I think it can be fixed, but the animal trading is online. This is online. This is the multiplayer component of the game, and it does seem to use some sort of web page, which means the buttons sometimes stop working. This is a bug that could be fixed, honestly. They do sometimes stop working. Even clicking on animals sometimes stops working, and it does lag. This isn't just my PC or anything. This is just this one menu that does this, because this is all online. It sometimes just doesn't work, and because of that, I feel like every now and then I do struggle trying to adopt animals. So this is something that could be fixed very soon. So if this does get fixed in the next week, then ignore that. But yeah, the main part of it is just mechanically the game is just speeding along way too quickly, and it just kind of hurts the enjoyment of the game. Every other part of this is absolutely brilliant, but when you have no time to just breathe, it is honestly a suffocating game to play, and as much as I want to absolutely love it, until that is fixed, I just can't really enjoy it as much as I would like. But there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. That is Planet Zoo, and for all of its, you know, beautiful things that it's done, there is just some parts that need fixing. But thank you very much for watching. My name is Panzer. Don't forget to leave a comment, of course, down below if you have any questions whatsoever about the game. And, of course, thank you very much for watching. I'll see you next time.